Welcome to the Comic Sauce Podcast, where we talk comics and comics culture. I am Henry Liu, and today I'm joined by Christian Diadamo. Christian, how's it going?
Hello there. I'm doing well.
Yes, I like that. I am also joined by Porfirio Rangel. Porfirio, how goes?
Doing well, Henry. Happy to be here.
Excellent. Today is June 19th, 2025. And did you know the year 2025 marks the 20th anniversary of Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith?
Woo!
So, yes, we're going to celebrate the 20th anniversary and talk all about this movie. So, yeah, can you believe it? 20 years of Revenge of the Sith. To moderate the conversation, Christian, Christian, take it away.
All right, thank you, Henry. So, we're talking about Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith, released on May 19th, 2005. 20 years and 1 month to this day. So, I'd say let's go back in time to May 19th, 2005, and let's talk about how we felt, first watched it. Like, um, what What were your first reactions to seeing it? Do you remember seeing it? Did you see it like opening day or opening weekends? And like, I guess if you can remember how hyped you were for this movie, why don't you start, Porfirio? Because you were younger.
I was young. Let's see, if that was 20 years ago, I was 10 when I watched Revenge of the Sith. I can't tell you if I watched it opening weekend or how long after the movie was released. Um, and to be honest, I did not have that much hype going to watch Star Wars Episode 3. I was just like, I'm gonna go watch it. It's Star Wars. I've been watching it my little short life. But it was amazing. It was so much fun, a lot of great Jedi scenes, and it was just a whole soap opera that is what makes Star Wars. I enjoyed it a lot as a kid and still do.
Hey, all right. And going back 20 years, when you watched it, Henry, how did you feel the first time you saw it?
How did I feel? Okay, so yeah, this was an interesting period for my Star Wars fandom, and certainly a lot of folks of my generation, Generation X, because episodes 1 and 2 had come out, and a lot of Star Wars fans, particularly of my generation, weren't too happy with how those movies went. And I was definitely part of that group. So I was not so excited to see this movie. And I remember the first time I saw it, I was kind of relieved because I got to see it for free. It was like a work outing, and my company treated us to a free screening of Revenge of the Sith. So it's kind of perfect because I did want to see it, but it was almost like, oh, I'm tired of giving George Lucas my money because of this garbage he's given us, right? So it's kind of cool in that I didn't have to pay for it, and I got to see this movie that I did want to see. Let it be clear that I did want to see this movie. I just was not very excited about it. So I can talk a little bit more about like how I received it later, but that's definitely how I was going in.
All right. Yeah, definitely the two different sides of Star Wars kind of coming to a head here.
Yeah.
We have the young kid, the young Padawan, kind of beginning his Star Wars, kind of journey at that age, and then you, Henry, kind of, the seasoned veteran, kind of seeing the different side of this movie. I was somewhere like, I guess in the middle. I think I was like 12 or 13. So I was a little older, and back then I was also like I was um very into my Star Wars fandom at this age because I really liked the last movie, Attack of the Clones.
Wow.
Yeah, as a kid, I mean, yeah, it was like released like 3 years ago. I was like 8 or 9. That was kind of the moment I think I truly fell in love with Star Wars because I was a little too young when Phantom Menace came out. And so there, of course, with Attack of the Clone, there was kind of the Clone Wars era of Star Wars that we had a few years of, where you had video games. There was a Clone Wars TV series in 2003 that I watched a little bit of. I don't know if that's considered canon
Oh,
anymore.
the one on Cartoon Network?
Yeah, it was on Cartoon Network.
Okay.
It wasn't 3D, but
Okay. Hmm.
there was that. Of course, you have all your massive amounts of Star Wars merchandise to go along with it. So Star Wars Clone Wars fandom was, really chugging along. It was like how a lot of kids saw Star Wars. I guess how I really saw Star Wars at this point. Even though by then I had already seen the original trilogy. And so this was also marketed as the last Star Wars at the time. And this is the last one with George Lucas making. It was the end of the trilogy, and it was the one that led into episode 4. And so I remember there was a kid at my school, probably happened, multiple kids, multiple schools, who would who their parents called them out sick that day so they could go watch the movie because this was the last Star Wars. To many kids, this is like an important event, and this one was also rated PG-13. This is the first Star Wars that was rated PG-13.
Oh, wow.
The rest were all rated PG. And so that was also, I think, for a lot of kids going to see this is like another bit of, oh wow, this is going to be something special, This is the more adult. This is where the boys become the men. You know, when you watch this movie, so to speak. Um, so as you can see, I really really like this movie back then as well. So I'd say let's go into this movie. Let's get into it. Let's start with some of the stuff we really liked this movie. Well, do you guys have anything you guys would like to call out seeing this movie? Actually, hey, before we do that, let's talk about you guys watching it again because seeing this
Mm.
movie in theaters is awesome. And
Hmm.
with the 20th anniversary, um, they re-released it in theaters everywhere, and I didn't get a chance to go see, but you guys both did. So, how was your experience rewatching this movie 20 years later?
You want to start, Porfirio?
Okay, sure, I could go. Yeah, so Henry and I, we went to go watch it back in May a few months ago at um AMC Kabuki in Japantown.
Mm-hmm.
It was totally awesome. Like we went to the theater. At first it was empty, and I think Henry were like, "Is anyone gonna come?" But then like, we were kind of early, and as we were just waiting and the trailer started rolling, it was a packed house. It was just super awesome. People were like just excited about it, and then right before the movie started, there was a really cool message by Hayden, the guy who plays Anakin Skywalker, to just thanking fans to watching Revenge of the Sith 20 years later, and like everybody just cheered. Nobody expected this. It was just super cool. And I think Henry noted this before when after we had watched the show, but like, since everybody's already seen it, there are certain scenes that everybody knew that was going to be funny or sad or like cheerful, so it was just so cool that like since everybody knew the movie that their energy was just kind of amped up. So it was cool watching it with a crowd and just being into it.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. It was a great vibe. Yeah, we saw it in San Francisco about 2 months ago now, and like it was so much fun. And you're right, like the crowd was really into it. Like there was a lot of laughs, there was a lot of cheers, a lot of applause, and just a lot of love. It was just a very memorable, fun experience.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I think this re-release like broke a record for having like the most like um the most amount of money for a re-release. And I mean, everybody liked it, so I wouldn't doubt it, but I don't have the exact numbers in front of me.
Um, yeah, I remember hearing that too, actually, at the time. Forgot to mention that. Here it is. So the re-release rigged in 42, let's see, in one weekend, 42 million. Um, open it's like the weekend that it opened.
Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, I do remember seeing that it was a blockbuster once again. It was the best time a movie's been re-released.
Yeah.
Um, which is great to see. It is great to see. I think the love for this movie kind of come back around again because as we'll get into it, this movie is very controversial. Like the other prequel movies, this movie has a lot of good and a lot of bad. So I'd say let's get into the good. Let's start with what we loved about this movie. Well, I'll start with you. Anything you guys want to call out as something you loved about Star Wars Episode 3?
I can start. So, Christian, you called it out earlier with your intro. Hello there. Great moment. Like that was one of those moments when we saw it in the theater where it got, the crowd kind of blew up and 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 burst into applause. So fun. Not only is it a callback to Alec Guinness's performance, but it kind of highlights how great Ewan McGregor is in this movie. Obi-Wan is awesome in episode 3. Um, he doesn't have that weird haircut he had in episode 1, and he's mature. He's kind of more the Obi-Wan we know. And there is some awesome Obi-Wan lightsaber action. So I think Obi-Wan Kenobi is a huge highlight for me in this movie. Um, like his challenges with Anakin are like dramatically solid. I think a lot of people make fun of this movie for a number of reasons, for good reason, I would say, but a lot of it is like good storytelling, good filmmaking, good acting, and like I would say the majority of the Obi-Wan Kenobi stuff is solid, action wise, acting wise, storytelling wise. Yeah, I really liked the Kenobi character in this movie.
Yeah, going off what Henry's saying, like those action scenes Obi-Wan had, especially that scene, against General Grievous was super dope. As a kid, I really liked it. Here's a droid holding four lightsabers. It's like, dude, what the hell is going on? So that was super cool. But I think, yeah, the action of it is just super great. Like the first opening scene, it's just going at 110 speed. Like we're seeing like this like space battle going on, and Obi-Wan and Anakin are in um space fighters, and they're just trying to get to the battleship that Emperor or Palpatine's in, and it was everything's just going at 100, so it just catches you from the very beginning.
Yeah, good call outs. I did also love Obi-Wan Kenobi as well. I think, yeah, I agree with you. Henry. This is kind of the best, like, I think Obi-Wan Kenobi, like, in a movie that we see, like, of course, Alec Guinness is always so great, but I think this calls back to him. And Obi-Wan Kenobi has some really good like swagger here.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess to further on, is what you meant. You said Porfirio about the action. Yeah, the action is pretty top tier. There's a lot of top tier lightsaber fights. Lightsaber fight and this is like I think pretty peak for Star Wars. So do you guys have like a favorite lightsaber fight in in this movie that you've seen? Because there's a lot.
There's a lot. I have one that it's easy for me. It's the lava planet battle at the end. The final conflict between Obi-Wan and Anakin. Awesome. The John Williams score is so dope, and there's great fight choreography, and like the setting is so cool. Like the image that is like ingrained in my brain is when Obi-Wan and Anakin cross lightsabers
Mm.
and this big lava explosion bursts in the background, right? It's so beautiful. And it's just a great fucking scene. And action wise it's great, but I was alluding to it earlier too, where drama wise it's great too. You have these two characters who, are at odds. And at the beginning of the movie, they're still tight, but there's like, it's starting to get a little rocky, right? And then throughout the course of the movie, they just sort of walk down separate paths, and then it all comes to a head at the end here, right? And it's just so satisfying. The battle is just like exciting. It's thrilling action wise, but we know what's going to happen, right? We've seen this movie several times. It's 20 years old, but watching it again for the first time in a while, a couple months ago, like that scene really holds up. Like I felt the dramatic weight behind it. Even though I totally know what's gonna happen, right? But that's how well done it is.
Like I have to say, I have to agree with Henry that that's my favorite battle scene. The action's great, and like Henry said, the drama, the storyline is just great. And I just remember as a kid just watching it, and it was like kind of like watching like your parents fight. You're just like, "Oh my gosh, no, please don't stop." And I was just like, "What's gonna happen? No, I don't want no one to like nothing bad to happen to either one." So I just remember I was so just hypnotized by what was going on, and watching it again, and um, as I got older, it's just different because like Henry said, the story's just good, the build up to it, like they were brothers, towards the beginning, and then they just kind of like separated, and then they just went at it, and it's powerful storytelling.
Yes.
Yeah, I also agree that is definitely the best one of the movie. Um, and of course, at the beginning, yeah, you see them together. They're fighting together. They're kicking ass together. They're like very chummy.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And then to kind of see them like where they see it at the very end, and then they leave each other, so Obi-Wan can go fight Grievous.
Hmm.
And so like I think it does really signify kind of this fall of Anakin.
Hmm.
So, which I guess I gives me a question we've been because I think one of the more controversial kind of parts is Hayden Christensen and Anakin. But how did you guys like him in this movie? How did you guys like Darth Vader?
I mean, Darth Vader, Anakin.
Well, this is where he becomes Darth Vader.
Uh-huh.
So, why don't you start, Porfirio? Like, what did you think of Hayden Christensen's performance as Anakin Skywalker in this movie?
So, I mean, as a kid, I thought Hayden was awesome. Okay, I didn't like him in the second Attack of the Clones. Let me take that back. But in this one, I really, again, like, I just really liked him. I didn't like Obi-Wan and Anakin fighting each other. I really liked Anakin. So I just, yeah, his performance was great to me.
Hmm. And how did you feel about Hayden Christensen, Henry?
Well, let's see. Let's take it back a bit. So Hayden Christensen first appeared as Anakin in episode 2, right? He did not play Anakin in episode 1. So kind of interesting. Jake Lloyd played Anakin in episode 1 and was kind of universally hated, right?
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people were kind of relieved that, they switched to an older actor. But then the hate train kind of continued because a lot of people thought he was quite bad in episode 2, and I was definitely in that camp. So episode 3, well, I mean, I did mention how the Obi-Wan Anakin dynamic was effective, right? It was dramatically effective. So he was doing something right. Like I feel like Hayden Christensen's scenes with Ewan McGregor were quite good. I mean, I think Ewan McGregor was better, but Hayden Christensen was serviceable, and the two of them told that story very well. So, I can't deny that he was effective in that regard. Um, and I'll note that Hayden Christensen has had a big resurgence as of late. A lot of fans really love this guy now. That's quite notable. Maybe we can talk about that more later. But here's a guy that like nearly every Star Wars fan hated back then, 20-ish years ago. But now everyone loves this guy. So like, wow, I mean, it still blows my mind, like I've seen this, and it's just like, wow, it's just like this crazy turnaround. But I digress. Let's go back to the original question. How was he in this movie? Okay, effective as a scene partner to Ewan McGregor. However, I was really paying attention to his performance in this movie because of this big resurgence. Almost like, am I missing something here? Right. So I was really paying attention. And I think he is objectively terrible in the non Ewan McGregor scenes, particularly the scenes he has with Natalie Portman, like the Padme Anakin scenes. Oh God, like I could barely watch those. They were just so cringeworthy. And yeah, it does blow my mind that he's so loved now, but I just will I have to say that like to me he's really terrible in those scenes with Natalie Portman, who happens to be, you know, a great actress outside of Star Wars. But anyhow, that's my take.
Yeah, real
Yeah,
quick, like I enjoyed Anakin, but I do have to agree with Henry. Like Hayden wasn't his best with his scenes with Padme. I just got to put that out there. That I agree with Henry right there.
yeah, I, d- I definitely agree. Because like the shots are all just kind of done in like an apartment, and like the dialogue is, it's hard for anyone to say some of those lines well because it's like the whole thing
True.
of like, oh, it is only because I am so in love with you.
Mm.
That scene.
Yeah.
And so I think there are moments I think when Hayden Christensen, I think when he really gets to act like Darth Vader, I think that's when he's at his best. I think there's a lot of in the back half of the movie. There's a lot of just scenes of him like, skulking and kind of looking really menacing.
Hmm.
Um, there's a shot where he's on Mustafar and he just kind of looks over and you see his eyes are like yellow
Hmm.
and he just has this like menacing look on his face and I thought that was like, yeah, that's Darth Vader right there. I think when the scenes when he like it seems like when he's really allowed to act and really kind of show off this character, I think that's when he's at his best. But there's a lot of scenes when he has where he is very much not. And I think those scenes have kind of been like memed,
Yep.
to and will be memed to the end of time for kind of how corny they are.
Hmm.
Yep.
So, but I think another performance that is universally loved in this movie is Palpatine. Yeah. Um, Ian McDormand as uh the Supreme Chancellor Palpatine,
Hmm.
who become who is revealed to be Darth Sidious. And I also think that's also another great kind of pairing for Anakin Skywalker.
Hmm.
And I think this is the movie where he really gets to shine. I didn't see episode 2. I don't even remember him in episode 2, but I do remember when we rewatched episode 1, I remember thinking, "Oh my god, there he is." And I completely forgot he was in the movie. And he's kind of just such a nice guy in that movie. But this one, you really get to see him really kind of be that, be the evil Darth Sidious.
Hmm.
So, how did you guys feel about Ian McDormand as Palpatine? Who wants to start? Why don't you start, Henry?
Sure. Yeah. Palpatine is very cool in this movie. Good call out. Um, One thing I'll note, there is kind of a meme-worthy moment for Palpatine in this one. I think you guys might know what I'm talking about. Unlimited power, right? It like kind of like what you were alluding to earlier, Christian. Some of the dialogue is a little difficult to deliver in a normal way. And that's one of those things, right? Like it just really stood out because in that moment, like it's when Palpatine takes out Mace Windu, right? Um, and I don't know, it would have seemed a lot more natural where if he didn't hadn't said anything and he just like busts out the lightning bolts out of his fingers, right, and takes out Mace. Why did he say that? Because George Lucas writes hokey dialogue. That's why. So let's not fault the actor too much, but it does it does need to be called out. It is a corny moment. Um, that said, the corny moments in this movie are a lot of fun, right? So even the bad stuff is kind of good in a way with this movie. But yeah, back to the performance. Palpatine is great. Like, there's one scene I really love in this movie, and I don't think I really appreciated it as much before rewatching it recently. And that's the scene where Palpatine and Anakin go to that really cool concert. It's like this
Mm. Hmm.
bubble concert. They're just like staring at giant bubbles and listening to like super chill music. First off, I was like, I want to go to this concert. Like this is great. Someone should actually do this in real life. I would go. I would pay money to go to this concert. But in addition to that, it's a scene where Palpatine delivers the tragedy of Darth Plagueis story, right? He explains the story to Anakin, and it's a huge part of the transformation, right? Anakin becoming Darth Vader. Like this scene is like key to that transition. And yeah, Palpatine is creepy. He's like unusually calm, just super calm and creepy. And his, like the line delivery is awesome. And um yeah, it just really sets the tone, like in a movie where there's a lot of kind of awkward line deliveries, like you don't get that in this scene. And it also like it really explains like what happened. Like it really, with and Anakin Skywalker becoming Darth Vader isn't like an overnight thing, right? It's something that happens over time, and this scene really helps that kind of gradual transition. You really understand why Anakin does what he does, you know? And yeah, again, kind of going back to what I was saying with like Ewan McGregor and Obi-Wan Kenobi, like bringing like some dramatic weight and some legitimacy to this movie. I think the same can be said for the Palpatine character, particularly in this scene.
Oh yeah, I do love that scene.
Yeah.
Well, what did you think about Palpatine Porfiria?
I mean, yeah, the Palpatine was a creepy, cool, amazing character. You know, like Henry was saying, like he just helped really develop the story of episode 3. He just helped connect, the prequels to the OG series, that transition into the Empire. And total full disclosure for everybody, when I watched the prequels, I had not seen the OG Star Wars movies, Star Wars episode 4, 5, and 6. So, when it was revealed that Palpatine was the Emperor, you know, I was totally mind blown. I did not see that coming. I was like, what's going on? Um, the same as when Anakin became Darth Vader. I did not see that coming. Um, so my innocence was killed when I watched episode 3. But it was like, so as a kid, I was like totally sold on this story. I was like, oh my gosh, it's going dark. It's getting there to the Empire, and so it was cool for me.
Yeah. I guess on a note here, I have a question about you guys about that. Now you mentioned at the end how it's like it's getting dark. It's the it's the beginning of the Empire and the end of the Jedi. Because I think while watching this movie, there was one scene that stuck out a little more to me this time for some reason than the previous times I watched it. And that scene is the scene between Yoda and Anakin in kind of the first half of the movie, where Anakin goes to Yoda and he says, "I've been having these dreams of Padme dying." Or he doesn't say it's Padme. He alludes
Hmm.
to it, and Yoda says, um, he's like, "What should I do?" And Yoda says, let let go of Padme.
Let go
Forget
of
about her. Do
attachment.
not miss her.
Hmm.
Remove your attachment to others, and that is the way of the Jedi. And that emotion is what will take what becomes the Sith basically.
Mhm.
Um, and so I don't know. For some reason, like I think when I first watched it, it's not really a scene I ever thought about
Hmm.
at all as a kid because it's Yoda and it's talking. I knew Anakin would become Darth Vader, and so you and so Yoda is like this, like he's the wise character that you kind of have trusted from the other movies, the wise Jedi Master,
Hmm.
head of all Jedi. But I think now, like thinking about it and watching it now, you're like, wow, that's pretty messed up, Yoda. That is like I think if one person told that to another person, like that's that would be like whoa, what? Like that wouldn't be something you'd say to somebody else.
Hmm.
And to give up emotion is essentially to give up what makes us human,
Hmm.
you know? And that's kind of what the Jedi
Hmm.
are is the this giving up emotion, and that's how you achieve good. So, this question is brought up like kind of over and over in the movie, but let's think of like, do you think the Jedi were wrong?
Mm.
Do you think that even though like it led to something so awful, the rise of the Empire and the return of the Sith, and like the destruction of the Republic, um, is do you think that maybe the Jedi weren't on the right path? Do you think that maybe there was something flawed in their approach? Or do you think you know, they were the good guys the entire time and they got blindsided? Because this is also a take I think that I didn't really think about until after watching. It's something that Luke Skywalker brings up himself in the Last Jedi,
Hmm.
is that and why he wants to destroy the Jedi. And he mentions that at the height they collapsed amongst themselves. So do you think it's just Palpatine getting the upper hand, or did the Jedi truly do this to themselves because there was something wrong about them?
Can I go
So
first? I have
yeah,
thoughts.
why don't you go first, Porfirio?
Okay.
Go for it.
Um, I don't know if I've ever said it on the podcast, but I think you guys know. Like, I have conflicting thoughts about the Jedi. Um, I don't always agree with their ways, like what you said, that scene about letting go to personal attachment. I just feel like that's what makes us human, caring about others. You cannot do that. Um, and I just feel like, yeah, the Jedi kind of low key did it to themselves. Everybody was always either taking advantage of Anakin or underestimating him. They had him be a spy for Palpatine, and that's the only reason why they let him have ranks of master. Um, but they didn't allow him into the Jedi Council. Mace Windu didn't want Anakin around when they went to go arrest Palpatine. I just feel like, yeah, the Jedi are kind of low key like police, and kind of indicating what is right, what is wrong. And I low key kind of think that the Jedi they have their own agenda. They do things on what they believe is the right thing, which may not be the universal right thing. And because they have the power, because they have the force, they think that they have the power to do whatever they want. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, but the Jedi, I feel like low key did it to themselves. Like Anakin was like like you mentioned earlier, Christian, like Anakin was slowly spiraling into the dark side, and the Jedi's like way they treated him just kind of pushed him to reach that limit.
Mhm.
Yeah. I know where you're coming from, Porfirio, and I do agree with a lot of that. Um, the scene you're talking about, Christian, um, it is interesting. First off, it is in Yoda's character to say something like this, right? Because he kind of does the same thing in the original trilogy where he's training Luke Skywalker, and then Luke wants to leave his training to help his friends, right? And Yoda's like, no, 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 like you gotta stick with your training, right? And Luke just ignores him and leaves, right? But yeah, Yoda is that guy. He sticks to this Jedi philosophy, which, it's debatable, and yeah, I think it is flawed, right? Um, because it's unrealistic. It's more idealistic, right? Like people should be a certain way and release all their attachments and all this kind of thing. Um, I think, it's up to interpretation, right? And it's almost like religious extremism, right? You can interpret certain writings one way, and you can interpret them another way. And to stick to the letter of the law can be dangerous, right? And I think that's kind of what Yoda's doing here, where he's really being like over overly limiting to Anakin, and it really backfires, right? It leads Anakin down this dark path, which is like what Yoda was trying not to do in the first place. So kind of ironic, right? But I think, the character I mentioned just now, Luke Skywalker, is a great example. Like, he is a Jedi, but he also loves his friends, and he um would die for his friends. And I think he's able to have that balance. So are all Jedi like, corrupt space cops? No. But are they kind of a corrupt space cop like organization? Yeah, kind of. Kind of. So I'll say that.
Mhm. And then here's a little follow-up question because they mention it a lot of times in the movie, but of course, it's never said what that truly means because Anakin is the chosen one, the
Hmm.
one to bring balance to the Force.
Hmm.
So, what do you guys believe is the balance of the Force?
I've thought about that so many times because, yes, you know, I feel like other people have educated me in saying that I guess low key Anakin did bring balance to the Force because there was like I guess like an unbalance between the dark side and the Jedi's, and he he helped bring down the Jedi. So there was a little bit more of like the dark side, you know. Um, there was, yeah, that balance, and but then more bad side during the Empire run during the OG series, which is why he killed Emperor Palpatine. So that's my take, I guess. I don't know, Henry, do you have something different?
That is an interesting question because when I heard that before, Anakin Skywalker is the one to bring balance to the Force. Um, like my take was that, oh, like ultimately he does kill the Emperor, right, at the end of Return of the Jedi, and that's the balancing out moment. But is it really? Because like they basically eliminate all Sith at the end of that movie. So wouldn't it be like, oh, it's an unbalanced universe at that point? So yeah, it's a tough question. Like, maybe one way to think of it is like at the end of the original trilogy, Yoda is dead, the Emperor is dead, and Darth Vader dies also, right? Um, and Luke Skywalker is alive. And Luke Skywalker, like I was saying, is kind of this balance, right? He is a Jedi, and he has great intentions. He wants to help people, but he is very emotional, and he does care for his friends, and he has these strong attachments. So maybe he is like this kind of the poster child of like the balanced force like in a way, right? Maybe that's what they were talking about. Anakin did bring about that moment, but Luke Skywalker is sort of like the embodiment of the balanced universe.
Hmm. Yeah, good takes. Um, so, all right, well, let's move on. And I guess, oh, let's get into a little more. I guess we'll get a little more of the bad before I want to talk about kind of the legacy of this movie and how this movie was received. Um, but do you guys have anything you want to shout out? I guess well, first, anything good before we get to anything bad, anything else good that you guys just want to shout out?
I don't know if this is good or bad, but one of my favorite scenes, and you guys may question me, is Order 66, you know? Oh my gosh, as a kid, I cried so hard during that scene. I cried so hard because I was like, again, I was not expecting any of this. So just seeing the Jedi die, as much as you just heard me like 5 minutes ago say how much the Jedi are corrupt, I was so sad to see them die, you know? It was so powerful, and even now, when I went to go rewatch O of Henry, even then I still got a little emotional just thinking like, that the Jedi fought so hard for an idea that they believed in to just be betrayed at the very end, and not even like in battle by their own people that they help lead and protect. And was it was just a really great scene. The music, the dialogue, the action, the special effects were really great. So, um, special call out to that. I don't know if that's good or bad, but special call out to that.
Yeah, that is such a very pivotal scene. And especially and like it's pretty brutal how like you do just watch him get gunned down.
Yeah.
And but it's also like a thing where you kind of wonder like does every clone know about this? Could they just say like order 66 and then they just all like, "Yep, all right, it's time." And then like completely just rewire into these terminators.
Well, yeah, so I found out that that's actually explained in the Clone Wars TV show. That yeah, the clones when they were created, they all had like you said, Christian, an implant in their head. So when like Emperor Palpatine says initiate Order 66, it is kind of like a switch for them to just like go all Terminator on the Jedi and anyone that went against Emperor Palpatine and his government.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, and so this is kind of going off episode 3, but like the Bad Batch, do you remember that TV show, the group?
Mhm.
So they're like a group of like, um, mutant clones, and they're not affected from the Order 66 because since they're mutants, they're um what's the word I'm looking for? Like this defunctant, you know? Then the Order 66 does not work on them because their chip is compromised.
Oh, huh. And that yeah, because the Bad Batch takes place right after
Mm-hmm.
Order 66,
Mm-hmm.
right after Clone Wars. Oh, that's pretty cool. All right. So, was there anything that you guys saw either this time or just kind of over time the watching it? And you guys wish that you didn't like anything about the movie that didn't work?
I Henry, do you have one?
Yeah, do you want? Would you
You
like
can
to start?
start. You can
Okay.
start for you.
I know I said earlier I really liked the action scenes in this movie, and it was. They were cool. As a kid, I really liked Obi-Wan versus General Grievous. But now that I've seen much more Star Wars content, especially the Clone Wars, I am like, there's no way fucking Obi-Wan killed General Grievous. Like, General Grievous is a badass in the Clone Wars. He's taking out 4 Jedi at a time, and then for him to go down from Obi-Wan's um laser rifle, I was like, this is some bullshit. Like, no, I was pretty mad after rewatching this.
Yeah, because you think or General Grievous had the power to just like block all the shots?
Yeah,
Because he was trained by Darth City or not Darth Sidious, Count
Count
Dooku.
Dooku,
Mm,
So you think he could have just blocked a laser shot like you see every other
Jedi.
lightsaber do?
Uh-huh.
I do really love that scene also, the Obi-Wan versus General Grievous scene. And I'm not familiar with General Grievous outside this movie, so I don't really know better. But one thing I would say is, you know, you might factor in the fact that this is at this point in time, Obi-Wan Kenobi is probably at his most powerful, right? He's in his prime. He's not a young Padawan anymore. He's highly skilled, and he's not the old guy from the original trilogy. So if you need some help justifying his victory, maybe that's it. It's Obi-Wan at his best.
No, Henry.
No,
But
okay.
keep going.
I know. I love General Grievous also, so like I'm not gonna argue too much with you. He's a badass.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so negatives. Do I have a negative to bring up? Yes. Or should I say no? So, I mean, this is along the lines of corny dialogue. Um, and dialogue that is like, oh, like no one would actually say this, you know? Um, like a lot of the Anakin Skywalker dramatic stuff does work in this movie. Like I was saying, his relationship with Obi-Wan is very powerful. It's great storytelling. But, you know, at the end of the movie, Palpatine reveals to Anakin that Padme has died, right? And, you know, we've all suffered loss in some ways, and everyone grieves in their own way, in their own unique way, right? So there's no right way or wrong way to react when we've had loss. But I gotta say, like, it's just so corny and like out of left field, this reaction. And um, you know, big props to the legend James Earl Jones. He does reprise the Darth Vader voice here, but it's just bad. It's just it shouldn't have been there. It should not have been there. Like how much more how much more powerful could this moment have been if Darth Vader was just silent? Maybe he just puts his head down. Like I don't know, but this moment is it's we've seen the memes. It's super corny.
Yeah. Oh my god, that scene has been memed so hard for 20 years. like like I saw it all over the internet.
Yeah. Oh, and for the record, I totally elbowed Porfirio in the movie theater when it happened.
And people laughed. Didn't they
Yeah.
laugh in the
Oh,
theater?
the whole theater laughed. Yeah, myself
Mhm.
included. Yeah.
I, and like there's definitely a lot of dialogue like that where
Yeah.
you'll have these cool characters and these cool action scenes and then it just kind of goes to this dialogue
Mm.
that's so corny and over the top,
Yeah.
you know, where you are right, like yeah, no one would speak like that. You're kind of just wait, what? And it is to the point where it becomes this big meme. Like you have no, you also have it's over. I have the high ground.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Yes.
like I said, that it is because I'm so in love with you. Or Mace Windu. What was it? Palpatine's the Sith Lord. We must go quickly, and then they
Yeah.
just like slowly walk away. And there are a lot of moments like that that do kind of like you have this like dramatic narrative going on, and then something happens that's so like kind of dumb. It just becomes really goofy. You're just
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
that just make you go, wait, what? Especially like the first few times seeing it. But I I think with those scenes, with all of that, it's kind of like, especially watching it now, as you guys can say, like watching it in the theaters, it's almost like that's the parts that get the most reaction from the audience in a way.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is the big no see?
Christian, real quick, like I guess, I have a few more scenes I that kind of just got my nerves. I think I talked this about with you, Henry, was the Palpatine versus Yoda scene. You know,
Mm-hmm.
real great action, no doubt, super awesome. But then the ending, it's just like, Yoda gets knocked down and then he totally dips and he says he failed. And then then he goes into exile and we don't see the dude for what, like until like episode 5. And, I don't know, maybe at the time it makes sense, but now thinking about it, I'm like, this is all Yoda's fault that we have Palpatine. He could have tried to finish the job. He still had some energy in him, fight to the death. But nope, he was like, "I'm out. I can't take this no more," and the galaxy's screwed.
Hmm.
That is a good call out. I did notice that too when we watched this movie. That's it seemed to end kind of abruptly, like, oh, you're giving up already, Yoda? Like,
Yeah.
hey, what's up, dude? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that was handled maybe a little ungracefully. I don't know, like, maybe Yoda recognized that he couldn't beat Palpatine, so he just sort of like pussied out. He's like, oh, fuck this.
Like, okay, like I get like if he couldn't do it, but he just like the way he left, he totally just went to exile. Like he went to like a deserted
Oh
planet on
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
swamp and just like went hit it behind with his tail between his legs. He didn't even try joining the rebellion or anything. At least
Yeah.
Obi-Wan went and like kept an eye on Luke Skywalker, you know? But
Yeah.
Yoda did nothing. He just was like,
Yeah.
I'm out. I'm just you guys all figure it out on yourselves. My mistake. I couldn't finish the job and you guys deal with it?
That's a good point. I do wonder, did Yoda feel bad that he handled things poorly? Maybe he felt like he totally fucked up how he approached Anakin, and felt guilty that he led him down the dark path. I don't know.
Good point.
Um,
Hmm.
maybe, yeah, we don't know though. But yeah, it is a good call out. Like, why did Yoda just all of a sudden be like, okay, I'm out this bitch, like
Yeah.
goodbye. Why did he do that?
Uh,
It's not entirely clear.
what about you, Christian? Do you have thoughts?
Hmm. Yeah, like especially because Yoda is supposed to be like the best Jedi. He's the
Mm-hmm.
leader.
Hmm.
He's the most
Hmm.
powerful.
Mm-hmm.
He's the wisest. And the way they set up this fight between them was that it was like, okay, this is do or die. And that's the way Obi-Wan and Anakin are fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Do or
Yeah.
die, fight to the death. This is like, you know, the one that ends it. But yeah, Yoda just was just like, nope, all right, I'm out. Almost like they didn't know what to do as a way to kind of tie it up because Yoda
Hmm.
has to be in Dagobah
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
in Episode 5 in Empire Strikes Back, and they had to find a way to get him to Dagobah, but they didn't fully know how to do that. So they're
Yeah.
just, oh well, they fight, you know, and he just says, no, I'm going into exile. Yeah, right. You're like, what? Why wouldn't he do that? Especially because Jedi are kind of like getting gunned down in the streets.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
the Jedi are getting destroyed, and it's at Palpatine's doing.
Yeah.
He never would have tried for a rematch. He never would have.
Mm-mm. No round two.
No round two.
Yeah. You know what it makes me think of? Like, I feel like the story might have been better if Yoda was dealt a crushing defeat at the hands of Palpatine, right? I think it would have made more sense if he just got his ass beat
Mm-hmm.
and he's almost like maybe he's near death and he's just like I can't do this anymore. I just gotta
Mm-hmm.
go. That'd be
Mm-hmm.
one thing. But I think, the fan reaction would have been like pretty bad. So Lucas was probably like, oh, let's just have him fight to a standstill, and then Yoda runs away. Um, but yeah, the problem there is just like, dude, like you're just giving up like that. Like you were taking on the most powerful Sith Lord ever, and you're doing fine. And then all of a sudden you just pack it up and leave. It raises some eyebrows, right? And so
Yeah.
I think maybe that's what happened. Like Yoda and or not Yoda, Lucas and others were probably like, oh, we can't have Yoda get his ass kicked. It's got to be like, maybe like a fight to the standstill or something. But yeah, the story wise, it just doesn't work that well.
Doesn't work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another scene I wanna call out that was bad for me was Christian, there's a scene or there's a moment, when Leia or Padme, she dies giving childbirth, to Padme and Luke, right?
Hmm.
Right.
But in episode 6, there's a scene where Luke asks Layla, "Do you remember your mom? You know, growing up?" And then she's like, "Yeah, I have vivid or I have fuzzy memories with her." And it's like, "No, you don't. She died giving childbirth. You do not have any memories when you were like 1 day old." So that always kind of irritated me that there wasn't kind of like continuation right there, that connection.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. It all kind of doesn't make sense, right? Like if Padme died at childbirth, then how would Leia have any memory of her, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Um, One thing to consider, I don't know if I buy it, but Leia is force sensitive, right? She has powers we don't understand. So, it might come to reason that she does have memories of her mother, even though she met her all of a few seconds at the very beginning of her life, right? So maybe there's that.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's almost like forced memories of her mom before she died, which
Yeah.
it's like not her memories, but her mom's memories. I guess that's just I don't know if that's ever been confirmed anywhere
Mm.
Uh-huh.
or if that's just a way
Midichlorians,
to.
man.
Yeah, it's just
Midichlorians.
midichlorians.
There you have it.
A way to explain a retcon, I guess.
Yes, yep,
Right. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Also, another controversial scene. I want to call out everyone's favorite character, Jar Jar Binks. Makes he
Yeah.
is a 1 second scene, but it is very important, leading into one of the biggest fan theories,
Mhm.
and it's that Jar Jar Binks is the one who cast the deciding vote to turn, um, you know, the Republic into an empire,
Mhm.
leading to a meme or a fan theory, take your pick, that Jar Jar Binks was secretly a Sith Lord the entire time from behind the scenes, and that he's truly evil because everyone's least favorite character,
Mhm.
the one who was kind of the kid's character from the first movie,
Mhm.
now did something so evil, had a hand in something so evil, the creation of the Galactic Empire.
Yeah.
So I think that's another scene that I would like to call out as something I didn't like, something that nobody liked.
Isn't I mean, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't there a little bit of truth in that? Wasn't like George Lucas said that there was like some kind of thoughts or draft of Jar Jar being a Sith Lord, but then just realized like that was just stupid. The fan reaction is just going to be like so hateful, you know?
Probably somewhere. I'd be surprised if that was an idea behind the scenes. I wonder if do you think he thought of that after the fan reaction to the first movie or before? Like, who
Mm,
knows? Maybe it's just something he
yeah.
thought. Well, what do I do with this character?
Yeah, it's kind of like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess we talk about. Let's talk about a little more of kind of the legacy of this movie. 20 years, you got like going into a packed theater, and this massive re-release for a movie that, if you go back, was pretty hated over the course of time. And like you said, Henry, it's come into this like big resurgence
Yeah.
in a way. People love Hayden Christensen now. They love this movie. They quote it, like, um, and so I think there's quite a few reasons. But do you guys have any theories on why this movie that used to be thought as pretty bad, and when you guys watch this, that's still a very flawed plot. Why do
I
you
have a,
think it is still so beloved to this day?
I have a few. I think one, nostalgia. You know, like I feel like the most dominant voice at the time was Henry's generation, and they were high off the OG series, and so watching the prequels, they were like, "Fuck this! This isn't our Star Wars," like this is not good. But then you have like our generation, Christian, who grew up with this trilogy, and now that we're older and have a voice in the Star Wars community, we're like, this was pretty, this we liked it as a kid, and it actually there's like this nostalgia feeling of us like this is our introduction into Star Wars. So there's that. And then my second theory is, Henry has said that this is his favorite movie out of the prequels. So, when you look at it and like on a wider scope, that they're like, you know what, like we'll take it. This is the best one out of the shitty prequel trilogy. Like it's not that bad, so we'll just take it. So that's those are my theories.
Hmm. Yeah, what do you think, Henry? Why do you think
Yeah.
this movie's beloved now?
Yeah, good takes, Porfirio. I definitely have some thoughts too. So I'm gonna go back. I kind of teased how I felt about the movie the first time I saw it. I didn't reveal like my thoughts at the time, but when I first saw this movie 20 years ago, I did enjoy this movie. I went in with low expectations and I was relieved that I didn't have to pay for my movie ticket. And after I saw the movie, I gotta say I enjoyed it, and I was very relieved that it wasn't a big piece of shit. You know, I was like, oh, thank God they actually made a good one of these. Um, this is George Lucas's final film as a director, still to this day, right? And I remember thinking about that, thinking, oh, George Lucas made two shitty ass Star Wars movies with episodes 1 and 2. Is it gonna be like he's gonna end his Star Wars directorial career over three shitty fucking Star Wars movies? And he didn't even direct episodes 5 and 6, right? So
Oh, he
then
did it?
he did not.
Oh, I never
He
knew that.
did not. So that's a pretty bad track record. So I was totally relieved. I'm like, okay, he finally did a decent prequel. I felt pretty good about it. Um, and yeah, it's a bit of a backhanded compliment that I was relieved that it wasn't shitty, right? But objectively, I enjoyed it, and I felt good about it. I was like, okay, they finished on a good note, and that at the time I was thinking this might be the last Star Wars movie I see ever. I mean, I don't know if I really believe that, but the thought did cross my mind, like this might be it, and it was a good movie, so I was like, hell yeah, thank goodness. Cut to 20 years later, Porfirio and I go check this movie out in theaters again. And yeah, I did think a lot about that initial viewing of Relief. And um, this time it was a lot of nostalgia, a lot of joy, and a lot of fun, right? Um, so I think what Porfirio mentioned makes a lot of sense. Like, as the millennials have grown up, um, they've become a huge voice in Star Wars fandom, right? So it makes sense that the Star Wars movies that millennials grew up with are being like um sort of better received now, right? Because of what we've been talking about and the nostalgia reasons, right? I wanted to call something else out too. This period of time in like the Star Wars timeline is like definitely like is demanding the most attention, right? Like Star Wars fans right now have a big old hard on for this period, right? This period, like the episode 3 and/or Rogue One episode 4 period, right? This period of time, like it's kind of what like everyone cares about right now, right? Um, for whatever reason. I don't know. That's probably a long, deeper conversation, but it it's worth mentioning that this period of time in the Star Wars timeline is like incredibly popular, and all the focus is on this period, right? So another, but you know, I think another big reason why this movie in particular is having a big resurgence.
Yeah, you make a good point that there is a lot of prequel love right now. I'd almost see this like it's almost like there's kind of this new era that's formed under Disney, which was kind of this uh between episode 3 and 4 era
Hmm.
where
Hmm.
you have Andor, you have Obi-Wan, Rogue One, all that. It's almost like this era of Star Wars that's just has also been created recently. Um and because of that, it's spawned all this nostalgia. Um I think something else that I was thinking of while watching this for a reason almost like why I think now opinion has shifted back is I think that the movie has been memed to death over the course of 20 years. That like good and bad, this movie has kind of it's a way for this movie is kind of to remain in the public consciousness are some of the weirder goofy bits. And so and in a sense in a way like at first it's like making fun of the movie, but over time is almost coming back because those bits are in the movie
Hmm.
when you watch it now, and because those are like, oh, the meme is about to come up. The
Yep.
bad parts are almost the parts you look forward to. They're the parts that are like, hey, yeah, they did the thing. And it's a
Right.
part of the movie that I'd almost say is like celebrated along with the good lightsaber fights.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
So what do you guys think of that? Has the controversy of the movie and essentially the meme, like the fact this movie's become like this big meme and kind of a joke, has that overall been good for this movie? Kind of the prequels almost as a whole, because that's happened to the other ones as well.
I mean,
But do you think controversy is good for a movie?
it can be, maybe, like this one, in this particular case, Revenge of the Sith, I feel like it has, it's definitely, like you said, Christian, just became viral memes, everybody keeps coming back to it for the good jokes, the whole no spiel. Um, maybe it's just give it some time. You look at like the sequel Disney trilogy, and people are still upset that Luke Skywalker threw his lightsaber in the Last Jedi. That there's a scene of him drinking milk, you know, and at least for me, I don't really see those memes yet. I don't know, but maybe that generation still has to grow up. Generation Z has to grow up, so we could see that nostalgia. Maybe I don't know, um, but yeah. So it just depends, I think.
Mhm. Yeah. What do you think, Henry?
What specifically on what?
So, do you think the controversy's been good for this movie, or do you think it's good?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It can
Um,
be good for a piece of, I guess, for a movie or a piece of art.
yeah, generally, yes, I would say controversy does help, you know, draw up interest for a film or any piece of art. And yeah, like, and that goes with the jokey memes we've seen for Revenge of the Sith, right? Um, it kind of makes the bad parts of the movie more fun, right? Like you were saying, Christian. Um, and I was thinking, our last episode was on Andor season 2, yeah,
Hmm.
and we all really enjoyed it, um, and kind of hailed it as, gritty, edgy adult Star Wars entertainment. Um, but I almost look at episode 3 as like the polar opposite. It's like they take place in like similar time frames, but man, talk about a total 180 in tone and vibe, right? And I could see like maybe you're not in the mood to watch Andor, but you're totally in the mood to watch episode 3, right? Like we talked about how like watching Andor, it drums up feelings of like Gaza and Donald Trump and genocide, like, maybe we don't want that so much sometimes. Maybe we need to like escape into Jedi Sith lightsaber battles and really corny dialogue and moments that make us laugh, right? So that's this movie. That's Revenge of the Sith, and I could go on and on about like the shortcomings of the movie, but to be honest, when moments like no or unlimited power comes up, like I laughed and I had fun with it. So like um yeah, yeah. I think it that kind of stuff does help the movie.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see.
Christian,
Well, yeah.
I have a question for you.
What is your question?
Um, did you feel, since you just rewatched this, did you feel like George Lucas predicted the future? Like episode one was like the blockage of the trade routes and everything. And then this episode is like a whole, like Palpatine's rise to becoming emperor, to becoming the empire. I think I told Henry, I just like, this just feels so like low key what's going on right now with the whole Trump presidency and government.
So that's a good question. I also think the fact that we are seeing also does in a way recontextualize some of this movie as well.
Hmm.
Um, and the way you see somebody kind of use, especially use war to take power. Um,
Hmm.
of course, that not be about the United States. That could be very many countries, and the way war is kind of orchestrated just for people to gain more power and consolidate power,
Hmm.
and how Palpatine was in control of pretty much both sides the entire time
Hmm.
as a way to change public opinion, and how he used on assassination attempts in order to further those goals. So I think there's definitely things you can um, pick out here and there about different pieces of U.S. history. Um, but I think with that, there's probably other, of course, there's other countries that he probably was pulling from parts of history um, that George Lucas was, thinking about and pulling from. And in a way, maybe it's almost like history is just repeating itself over and over.
Hmm.
So who knows? Maybe he was right on the money, or maybe not.
I
But
do
yeah,
think
good
it's
question.
I do think it's pretty wild that real life is looking like Star Wars right now. I mean, it's crazy, right? Like, in my mind, quote unquote serious science fiction. Okay, we see real life in that, like, you know, the Terminator movies or Blade Runner, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
But never in my wildest dreams did I think that real life would in any way resemble Star Wars. But here we are. So it's a pretty wild time right now for sure.
We have to join the rebellion. That's the
There
Yeah.
answer.
you go.
We have to also look for Donald Trump's Death Star. What the hell is he planning?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess we'll see.
Hmm.
All right. Well, anything else you guys want to shout out about the movies, or Would you guys like to get to the ratings?
Okay, I have another question for you, Christian.
Yeah, what's your question?
So I know I talked about this with Henry, but do you think that scene where Mace Windu fights Palpatine, and, like Anakin gets involved and everything, we see Mace Windu kind of like being thrown off from the window, you know? Do you think Mace Windu could have lived? You know, I have seen theories where people say that Mace Windu actually used the Force to push himself off the ledge to escape that, and so then he lives. You know,
Hmm.
so what do you
Well,
think?
yeah, Darth Maul lived after he fell down a bottomless pit, and
Uh-huh.
he was cut in half. So yeah, I guess by that logic, it is possible that Mace Windu could have lived. I did always assume he died. I guess I never really thought about that, but that is another interesting theory. I don't know. Do you think he lived, or do you think he died?
I like to think he lived. It's like it gives more low key, more material for Star Wars to work with. Mace Windu TV show. What did he do? After he survived that. But then it kind of goes to another question, like if he lived, similar to like Yoda, what the hell did he do during the Empire? Did he also hide in exile? Like, so who knows?
Yeah, that's my problem with that theory. Whereas with Yoda, okay, I could maybe see him going into exile because how he failed with Anakin. But Mace Windu, if he survived, he wouldn't go into hiding. He'd be like, "Fuck this shit. I'm gonna like fight the Empire.
Well,
I'm gonna
what did
get out there."
what didn't he get both of his hands cut off?
Oh, I don't remember exactly. So you're saying maybe he couldn't he
He couldn't,
couldn't
yeah,
fight
he couldn't fight
anymore.
because I mean that's why he got shocked because when he was about to give the blow to Palpatine, Anakin stepped in and cut off his hands, right?
I forget if it was one or both, but yeah, he did do that.
Maybe you're onto something there.
Yeah, maybe he just said, "Fuck this, I'm out of here."
Yeah, like I'm done. I'm
So,
retired.
so yeah, what do you think, Christian? Did he die or did he live?
I don't know. I guess because we haven't seen him because no, I think he lived, but I guess you're right. It is possible he could have just gone into exile
Mm,
and just kind of set him out, and you never saw him again.
mhm. What were you, Henry?
Like you, I'd like to think he lived because Mace Windu is badass, but it sure as heck seemed like he died, so I'm sticking with he's dead. Yeah.
Hmm. Like, and I guess that does remind me of a scene. Something I guess going back. I'm almost thinking, what would have been the correct thing for Anakin to do here when he was talking to Yoda, and Yoda said, you know, um,
Let go of
leave
emotion.
whoever it is die. And I'm thinking, it makes for a pretty bad movie. But do you think maybe almost like the thing to do was what if Anakin just said, I'm getting married to Padme, I'm gonna stop being a Jedi, and I'm just gonna go off and live in exile with my wife. In a sense, would that have been the best thing? Would that have brought thing to is in a sense not the death of Padme, but the death of quote unquote Anakin Skywalker?
I mean, would have definitely had a totally different Star Wars movie.
He just
Maybe not.
said, yeah,
ma-
it's like I think it's the answer that kind of means well, the movie's just kind of over right there.
Yeah, like I don't think we would have had an OG trilogy.
That's
You
the
know.
least exciting option, but that gets
Yeah.
rid of Darth Vader.
No Emperor
That
Palpatine.
yeah, no Emperor Palpatine because he doesn't have his big leverage against the Jedi.
Mm, and if he
Hmm.
did, the Jedi, there's a lot of them that are still alive, and they would have just taken him out.
and they probably would have lived on without someone so. But it gets rid of probably the most force sensitive user
Hmm.
in the entire, Star Wars universe, the most powerful force user.
Hmm.
Of course, and then of course that's why he got the visions. What he did is what led to the visions coming true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, just a little theory of kind of what could have happened. I guess I thought about that Yoda scene a lot more than I realized.
I mean, it is a good question because you do wonder why didn't he just think of running away with Padme and leave it all behind, you know? And I think, the same way Yoda was was really rigid in his thinking. It's like, oh no, you must have no attachments. You must you must let go of Padme. Anakin was very rigid in his thinking too, right? He was like, okay, we got to go all in on one thing or all in on the other thing, right? Can't have
Hmm.
it both ways, no middle ground at all. But, if he interpreted the ways of the Jedi a little more loosely, yeah, like he wouldn't he didn't have to like go all in one way or the other, right? Um, so yeah, like and I think the big another big thing is the visions, right? The nightmares he was having. That's what had him convinced that if
Hmm.
he did nothing, that Padme would like 100% die, which is like kind of crazy thinking, but I mean that's where his headspace was, right? So you do understand why he does what he does,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's kind of crazy that he has these nightmares and he just like 100% believes like what's gonna happen if he doesn't do anything. Yeah, so there's that.
Hmm, it's a good way to put it. Yeah, it's almost like he could never have done that because
Yeah,
of the way he was thinking.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is his it's kind of crazy headspace he was
His
in, but that's yeah,
headspace.
yeah, that's where he was.
That's
Well,
where he
so
was.
I think maybe being, probably his own personal ambitions as
Hmm.
well.
Yeah.
Okay, Christian.
Hmm.
I think I also brought this up to Henry when we watched it, but does it ever kind of bother you that like you know how Layla and Luke are separated at birth for their own protection?
Yeah.
Does it bother you that Layla went to go live royal life as a princess and Luke went back to Tatooine where Anakin wanted to get away from?
Yeah, she becomes Princess Leia while he just go harvest moisture on a
Yeah.
farm.
Yeah.
Because, which also, if you think about it, is almost like you kind of wonder if Darth Vader could be some place where Darth Vader would want to go back to at some point, because that's where his only family is.
Hmm.
So even though he hates the planet, and you think like, what if Darth Vader did just decide, I'm gonna go back there one day to Tatooine where I was born.
Then that plan sucked that Obi-Wan and Senator
Yeah.
Organa thought
back
of.
back big backfire there.
Yeah.
Hmm. Because that is a planet he knows about and he's been to and has a connection to, and they're like, well, we need to hide his child from him. Where are we gonna hide him?
Where's Dad's from?
Yeah, yeah, where's dad's from? But then again, as seen in the last movie, he hates sand. It's coarse and it gets everywhere.
Hmm.
Right.
So in a sense, maybe that is the best place. It's the one place he would never go because of that.
Hmm.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, it is an interesting observation that it seems like Luke got the short end of the stick there, right? But I think the decisions made sense, right? Because Luke had relatives on Tatooine, right? And Bail Organa was actually looking to have like an adopted daughter, right? So, I think all the decisions with the children kind of made sense in that way. I mean, yeah, it's kind of unfair, I suppose, but they made sense to me.
George Lucas should have just never had Layla and Luke be brother and sister, especially after that kiss scene, you know?
Uh-huh.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yep, yep. Hey, I had a thought, guys. So we mentioned the high ground moment,
Mm.
So I definitely was paying close attention to this when I rewatched this movie recently. Um, was it just me, or did it seem like Anakin could have easily stepped off the platform to solid ground in front of Obi-Wan Kenobi? Like, it wasn't the case where it was like Anakin is standing on a platform, lava, and then Obi-Wan was right there at the edge of the ground. No, there was like, I think, a fair amount of ground in front of Obi-Wan Kenobi where Anakin could have like stepped there. He didn't have to do this crazy like jump move, right? So that was my first thought when I saw that. Um, my second thought was something I was surprised I never thought of this before, but it seems like what Anakin was attempting to do to Obi-Wan Kenobi was exactly the way Obi-Wan Kenobi defeated Darth Maul
Mm,
in episode 1. Like
hmm.
Darth Maul totally had the high ground on Obi-Wan at the end of Phantom Menace, right? And he like does this crazy jump move and slices Darth Maul in half, right? So it seems to me that Anakin was trying to do that same move. So it's almost like bookending the prequel movies, right? So just some random thoughts there.
Obi-Wan was like, I know what you're doing. I've done it before.
Right. He's like, I know what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
You're not gonna pull that shit on me.
I invented that move.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I think that the high ground stuff is like highly memed also, right? So I think there's a reason for that. Everything around that is pretty ridiculous. It seems like Anakin didn't really need to do that crazy move,
Hmm.
and it just seemed like kind of a ridiculous way to end this really epic fight.
Mhm. Yep, which I think is almost like encapsulates the movie in a nutshell.
There you
Epic
go.
moments, and then it does something where you're like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah.
All right. So, do you guys have anything else, or do you want to get to ratings?
I'm okay with
Yeah,
All
ratings.
right.
me
Yeah,
too.
let's rate this. All right. Why don't you start, Porfirio? Out of 5, what would you give Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith?
Easily a 5. I mean,
Ooh,
like,
the full 5.
this is my childhood. This is my favorite Star Wars of the Skywalker saga. Very fighting words, and I'll fight anyone who says otherwise. I enjoy the action, the story, um, the drama, and I feel like, if you watch Clone Wars, the anime show, you kind of appreciate this even a little bit more. Um, but it was just a super dope movie when it first came out. I enjoyed it so much, and rewatching it 20 years later and throughout all the years in between, especially with Henry, it was super awesome. I was in the feels, and it still lived up to the hype that I remember. So 5 out of 5 for me.
All right. Hey, the full 5. All right. Well, what would you give it, Henry, out of 5?
Out of 5. Okay, so episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. As I've been saying, I enjoyed. when I first saw it, and I definitely enjoyed it again watching it recently. And I totally get what Porfirio was saying. Um, there's a huge nostalgia factor watching this movie. There's a huge fun factor. And, even the quote unquote bad moments are fun too, Um, so it's hard to bash this movie too much, but like objectively, it's just not a very good movie. It's not well made. It's poorly acted at times. The dialogue is really terrible at times. A lot of the problems I have with this movie, I did have with Phantom Menace. We talked about that quite a bit. Attack of the Clones as well. All the prequels have these sort of issues. Um, so it is kind of hard to separate like the fond memories, the nostalgia, and the like collective fun aspect to it. Like this is a movie I feel like Star Wars fans can have like really great conversations about, like we're having right now, reminiscing and talking about how corny some of the moments are, how awesome some moments are, and talking about the legacy of things and just how interesting the career trajectories are of the people involved in this movie. And we can go on and on. So I'm not gonna like, I'm not gonna like shove that all aside. That's great. That is important. That's fandom. That is fandom, right? So I'm not gonna poo-poo that. But when I think ratings, it's definitely more like objectively like a movie critic hat on kind of thing. So with that in mind, I'm gonna go 3 out of 5. A recommendation, but more of a slight recommendation.
All
Porfirio
right.
Porfirio's giving me the thumbs down, which I understand. I get it. I get it.
And I think for this movie, just as it's got very heavy nostalgia points,
Yeah, for sure. I get
and
it.
I think a lot comes to mind to see it, and I think it's something that it's definitely celebrated now. I have a hard time really putting a rating on it too, because I think if you had to ask me 10 years ago, um, I probably would have given it a lower rating. I think that was a time when nobody liked the prequels,
Mm-hmm.
and like by the time the Force Awakens had come by, that we were kind of ready to be done with this era, but now we've kind of come back around. So the way we talked about the way this movie has changed in public perception, I think some of that has influenced me as well. So and I think nowadays that it's like the good parts are good and the bad parts are funny. So I had a really good time watching this, even though, like you said, like there's just all this kind of bad that comes with it, and it does make some moments feel a little flatter than they should be. But like I said, I do enjoy seeing this. I've seen this multiple times, and I'm still going to see it more in the future. And I have come back around to love this movie again, like when I was a kid, in albeit in a different way. So I'll probably I had a hard time kind of really picking this one. I was feeling, but I wasn't sure whether to give it the 3 or the 4. So I'll probably give it in the middle of you guys. I'll give it a 4. Something of a movie I really love, but like I said, there's a lot of nostalgia points in there. Nostalgia and a bit of me enjoying the meme that has become.
All right. With that, we can wrap up the episode. This is farewell from Christian, Porfirio, and Henry.